The night before, Catherine had found him standing at the bedroom window, staring into the gardens where he and Harry once played as boys. She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You're thinking about him again," she whispered. He nodded, words failing him. Only later, voice thick with memory, had he admitted, "After Mum died, we promised we'd always be there for each other. And now, I don't even know if he'd take my call." Those words lingered with him now as he neared his father's private study. His heart was steady, but his stomach was tight with nerves. What if speaking up only made things worse? What if his father had already given up? Yet another thought pushed him forward, the thought of his own children. George, Charlotte, and Louis. How would he feel if years from now they stood divided, carrying wounds carved by silence? He could not bear it. William paused at the heavy oak door. From inside came the low murmur of his father's voice, measured and calm, as he ended a formal call. A soft click, and then silence again. This was the moment. He raised his hand, took a breath, and knocked. "Come in," King Charles's voice called, warm but weary. William turned the handle and stepped into the familiar room. The king sat behind a mahogany desk, surrounded by books, sketches of gardens, and watercolors he had painted in quieter years. On one side stood photographs of his sons, his late parents, and Diana. Some frames were face down, as though the memories within them hurt too much to face. Charles looked up. The mask of royal duty slipped for just a second, and William saw it. The exhaustion in his eyes, the sorrow he tried so hard to hide. "William," Charles said, surprised, "I wasn't expecting you this morning." "Father, I know you're busy," William replied, voice calm but determined. "But I was hoping we could talk. About Harry." The name landed like a stone dropped in still water. Charles's expression shifted, the practiced calm fading to reveal the vulnerable man beneath the crown. Slowly, he gestured to the chair across from him. William sat, choosing his words carefully. "I've been thinking a lot about our family, about what Mum would want, about the legacy we're building for our children. I can see how much this rift has hurt you, and I can't just stand by anymore." Charles leaned back, eyes glassy with unshed tears. His voice trembled. "William, some bridges may be too damaged to repair." "But what if they are not?" William pressed gently. His voice grew softer, but stronger with each word. "Underneath all the hurt, I still see my brother. The boy who crawled into my bed during thunderstorms. The boy who laughed until he cried at silly jokes. The man who cared so deeply about people that he would fight for them, even when it cost him everything. I miss him. Father, I know you miss him too." The king's composure cracked. He removed his glasses, rubbing his eyes with a tired hand. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, voice barely above a whisper, he confessed, "I've wanted to reach out so many times, but every attempt was rejected, and I'm afraid that if I try again and fail, that will be the end." The silence hung heavy. Outside, the faint hum of London traffic drifted through the window, a reminder of the world moving on, even as their family stood still. William leaned forward. "Then maybe it's time to try something different. Maybe it's time to stop thinking like a king and start thinking like a dad." The words pierced the quiet. Charles looked at his eldest son, torn between the ruler he was and the father he longed to be. His eyes flicked toward the window, toward the ancient oak tree in the gardens below. Memories flickered there, memories of Harry's childhood laughter, of scraped knees and bandaged arms, of love too deep to vanish. "Do you remember when Harry fell from that oak tree?" William asked softly. "You didn't summon him to a meeting or give him a lecture. You held him. You stayed with him in the hospital. You made sure he knew he was loved." Charles's face softened as the memory returned. "He was only 8, he murmured. So brave, holding back his tears until I carried him." "He's still that boy," William said. "Still that person underneath the anger. I think is lashing out from pain, not malice. And pain deserved compassion." For a long moment, Charles said nothing. Then he stood, walking slowly to the window. He stared out at the oak tree, hands clasped behind his back. But the things he said about Camilla, about me, about the family, how do we move past that? "The same way you moved past my mistakes," William answered gently. The same way you love me even when I embarrass the family. You didn't cut me off. You helped me grow. Why should Harry deserve less? Charles turned, eyes wet. He saw not just his heir, but his son, speaking not from duty but from love. I've carried Harry's number in my phone for months, William admitted, voice cracking. I write messages and delete them. Fear stops me. Fear of rejection. Fear of making it worse. But some risks are worth taking. Family is worth it, even when it's messy, complicated, painful. The words hung in the air like a challenge and an invitation. Charles walked back to his desk and reached for a photograph, one of him, William, and Harriet Sandhurst, all three smiling with pride. For months, the frame had been turned face down. With trembling hands, he lifted it, setting it upright again. Perhaps, in that moment, something shifted. The study was quiet, but the silence was no longer heavy with despair. It was a silence of decision, the fragile pause before a man chose courage over pride. King Charles sat at his desk, staring at the photograph he had just set upright. For months, he had buried it beneath his grief, but now the smiling faces stared back at him, two boys who had once been his entire world. He reached out, fingertips brushing over Harry's image, as if touch alone might bridge the distance of years and oceans. William watched his father closely, giving him space. He knew this moment could not be forced. Healing, after all, does not begin with grand speeches. It begins with a choice. Finally, Charles spoke. If I reach out again, William, what if it's rejected? What if it only deepens a wound? Then at least you'll know you tried, William said softly. At least you'll know you chose love over silence. Isn't that what Mum would have wanted? The words pierced Charles's heart. Diana's memory lived between them, a reminder of promises made and love lost. Slowly, Charles reached into the drawer of his desk and pulled out a piece of cream-colored stationery, embossed with his personal monogram. It was not palace letterhead, not an official crest. This would not be a letter from the King of the United Kingdom. It would be a letter from a father to his son. He hesitated, holding the fountain pen that had signed treaties, official decrees, and historic documents. But what weight did those compare to the task before him now? His hand trembled slightly as he hovered over the page. Begin with the truth, William urged. Begin with love. And so he did. The words came slowly at first, scratched onto the page in ink that carried decades of unspoken emotion. My dearest Harry. At first, Charles wrote tentatively, careful with his phrasing, afraid of saying too much or too little. But as the ink spread, his hesitation melted. The dam broke. Memories poured out. Memories of Harry's first steps, of camping trips in Scotland, of pride watching him in uniform, of joy on his wedding day. Each sentence was both confession and gift, each paragraph a lifeline stretching across the divide. He wrote of regret, too. The nights he lay awake, replaying words said in anger. The ache of watching interviews, seeing pain etched on his son's face, knowing he had not done enough. The fear that the crown, the duty, the endless weight of monarchy had stolen too much from his children. And yet, through every line, one theme pulsed steady. Love. Love that had never wavered, even when masked by silence. Love that outlasted scandal, duty, and pride. When Charles finally paused, 3 pages lay before him, heavy with ink and truth. He set down his pen, staring at what he had written. His shoulders sagged, as if the act itself had drained years of burden. For the first time in a long while, there was no mask, no crown. Only a father. William leaned forward, reading the raw honesty in his father's eyes. This could change everything. Charles folded the pages carefully, his hands lingering on the edges. He slipped them into an envelope, sealing it not with wax, but with trembling fingers. For a moment, he simply held it, as if afraid that letting go meant surrendering control. Now what? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. William answered firmly. Now, we trust in love. I'll deliver it myself. No couriers, no officials. Just me, as his brother, not as a prince. Charles studied his son, pride and sorrow mingling in his gaze. That's a long journey. It's the right one, William replied. If this letter is to mean anything, it is to come from family, not the institution. And so the plan was made. Quietly, without the usual machinery of royal travel, William prepared to board a flight to California. No fanfare, no press leaks. This was not a royal duty. This was an act of love. The night before departure, William sat again by the window with Catherine. He held the sealed letter in his hands, the paper heavier than gold. Catherine touched his arm gently. "Are you ready?" "I'm terrified," he admitted, "but I'd be more terrified of doing nothing." She smiled faintly. "That's why you'll make a good king someday. Not because you never feel fear, but because you act anyway." The next morning, William boarded the plane alone. 13 hours stretched before him, time enough for doubt to creep in. He stared at the envelope in his jacket pocket, feeling its weight with every heartbeat. He thought of Harry, his laugh, his temper, his compassion. He remembered family trips, the mischief in Harry's eyes, the bond they had once called unbreakable. And he wondered, could it ever truly be broken? Somewhere over the Atlantic, William pulled out his phone. He scrolled through old photos, him and Harry grinning in uniforms, standing side by side at events, young boys in a mother's embrace. Memories that felt both close and impossibly far. When the plane touched down in Los Angeles, the world outside felt surreal. Sunshine, palm trees, and unfamiliar landscapes blurred past the window of the car that carried him to Montecito. But William barely noticed. His mind was fixed on the moment ahead. At last, the car slowed before Harry's home. To William's surprise, it was not a fortress but a family home, warm, lived in, children's toys scattered across the lawn, laughter faintly drifting from somewhere inside. He stepped out, heart pounding, the letter in his pocket feeling like a 1,000-pound weight. Standing at the front door, he hesitated for a full minute. His hand hovered near the bell. This was not a palace. This was not official ground. This was his brother's home. With a deep breath, William pressed the bell. The door opened, and there she was, Megan. Her eyes widened in surprise, then shifted through a kaleidoscope of emotions, confusion, weariness, perhaps even a glimmer of hope. "William," she said softly, "I wasn't expecting you." "I know this is sudden," William admitted, steady but nervous. "But I need to see Harry. It's important." She studied him for a moment, searching his face. Whatever she saw there, maybe vulnerability, maybe sincerity, made her step aside. Is in the garden with the children. And just like that, the stage was set. The California sun was warm, the kind that painted the garden in gold and softened every edge. Through the tall windows, William caught his first glimpse. Harry pushing Archie on a swing, his laughter carried on the breeze, while little Lilibet toddled nearby, her curls bouncing as she stumbled through the grass. It was a picture of ordinary happiness, yet for William, it felt like looking into a life he barely recognized, a life he had missed. Megan led him quietly onto the patio. "Harry," she called softly, "you have a visitor." Harry turned. The easy smile he had worn for his children vanished instantly. His body stiffened, every line of him defensive. Years of silence, anger, and unspoken pain condensed into a single frozen moment. "William," he said finally, his voice flat, neutral, unreadable. "This is unexpected." "I know," William replied, taking a hesitant step forward. "I should have called, but I was afraid you wouldn't want to see me." Harry glanced at his children, then back at his brother. His jaw tightened. "Archie, Lily, go inside with Mama for a snack." His voice softened for them, but his eyes never left William. The word uncle caught William like a blade wrapped in silk, so tender, so painful. Uncle. His nephew and niece hardly knew him, and yet they were bound to him by blood, by love unspent. He watched them disappear inside, Megan's hand resting protectively on their shoulders, before she gave William a quiet nod and left the brothers alone. The garden fell silent. Harry folded his arms, shoulders squared like a soldier bracing for impact. "So," he said, bitterness barely disguised, "what brings the heir to my doorstep?" William flinched at the edge in his tone, but he pressed on. "I came as your brother, and I brought something from Dad." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the envelope, cream-colored, heavy with 3 pages of a father's heart. He held it out, but Harry's eyes narrowed. "I don't want another lecture, another ultimatum." "It's not that," William said gently. "It's not the king writing. It's a father who misses his son more than he can bear." Harry's arms tightened across his chest, but something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or longing. "And you?" he asked sharply. "Do you miss me? Or are you just here to do what the golden boy always does, follow orders?" The question sliced through William, but he did not look away. His voice trembled with truth. "I miss you every single day. I miss your laugh, your terrible jokes. I miss having someone who understood what it was like for us. I miss my brother." For the first time, Harry's arms lowered. His face softened, though his eyes remained wary. "You had a funny way of showing it. Months of silence, years of distance." "I was scared," William admitted. "Scared anything I said would make it worse. Scared of rejection. But that fear kept me from fighting for you. And I can't let fear win anymore." The envelope hung between them like a fragile bridge. Slowly, Harry reached for it. His hands trembled as he took it, holding it as though it might shatter. "I don't know if I can handle more disappointment," he whispered. "You can," William said firmly, "because you're stronger than you believe. You survived losing Mom. You survived the battlefield. You built a new life in a foreign land. You can handle a letter from a man who loves you." Harry sank onto a garden bench, the envelope heavy in his grip. For a moment, he just stared at it, as though afraid of what it might say. William sat beside him, not too close, but close enough to remind him he was not alone. "Do you remember," William said softly, "when Dad made us write thank-you notes for Christmas? You always said words never felt like enough." Harry's lips twitched, the shadow of a smile. "And you always finish in 5 minutes while I sat there for hours." "Well," William said gently, "Dad spent 3 hours writing this one. 3 hours choosing every word, trying to say what's been trapped in his heart." Harry swallowed hard, then opened the envelope. The pages unfolded, his father's handwriting filling them. As his eyes moved over the words, William watched his brother's face transform. Skepticism giving way to hesitation, hesitation to sorrow. Tears welled as Harry read of shared memories. Camping trips in Scotland, the pride Charles felt watching him graduate Sandhurst, the joy of his wedding day. His defenses began to crumble. When he reached the part where Charles wrote about turning their family photograph face down, then finally turning it upright again, a sob escaped him. "He kept our picture," Harry whispered, voice cracking. "Of course he did," William said softly. "He never stopped loving you. Not for a single moment." Tears streamed freely now as Harry continued reading. Regrets, sleepless nights, love beyond measure. And then, the final words, "The door to our family is always open. We are not complete without you." Harry folded the pages carefully, pressing them to his chest as though protecting something fragile and sacred. His shoulders shook, and William instinctively placed a hand on his back. To his relief, Harry didn't pull away. "I've been so angry for so long," Harry whispered. "Told myself I didn't need him, didn't need any of you. But I do. God, I do. I miss Dad. I miss you. I miss belonging somewhere." William's voice was firm, steady. "You do belong. You always have. Distance and mistakes can't erase that." For a long time, the brothers sat in silence, the California sun sinking low, painting the sky in fire and gold. In that silence, words weren't needed. The letter had spoken what years of silence could not. At last, Harry looked at his brother, eyes red but filled with something new. "Do you think he meant it? About the door always being open?" William held his gaze. "I think Dad has been standing at that door, waiting for you to walk through." Harry let out a shaky laugh, half sob, half hope. For the first time in years, William heard the faint echo of the brother he remembered, the laugh that once filled their childhood. In that garden, something began to shift. Not a full reconciliation, not yet, but a beginning. The garden was bathed in twilight when Harry finally set the letter aside, his fingers trembling as though reluctant to let go of it. He stared at the horizon, the California hills painted in amber light, and whispered, "I don't know how to come back from this. So much has been said. So much has been done." William leaned forward, his voice steady, one step at a time. One conversation at a time. That's all healing ever is. Harry looked down, his features lined with weariness and sorrow. What if I've changed too much? What if I don't belong in that world anymore? Then we'll find a new way to fit together, William replied. Families adapt. What matters isn't staying the same. It's loving each other enough to build something new. For a long moment, Harry was silent. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. Not the brittle laugh of recent years, but the warm, boyish laugh William remembered. Do you remember, Harry said, eyes glistening, when we'd fight as kids? Swear we'd never speak again, then sneak chocolate from the kitchen and make up an hour later. William smiled. Maybe not everything changes as much as we think. At that moment, Megan appeared at the back door with Archie and Lilibet, their little faces lit with curiosity. Archie ran straight to his father. Daddy, can we play more swings? Harry scooped him up with ease, pressing a kiss to his son's hair. William's heart clenched. His brother was a good father, tender and present, qualities no crown could define. Lilibet peeked shyly from behind Megan's legs, then toddled toward William. She studied him carefully, her small hand reaching up to rest on his cheek. You look like Daddy, she announced with toddler certainty. William chuckled, his throat tight. That's because we're brothers, just like you and Archie. The moment was fragile, but full of possibility. Then came Archie's innocent question. Are you a prince, like Daddy used to be? The air stilled. William glanced at Harry, unsure how to answer. Harry's voice was soft but firm. Yes, Uncle William is a prince, and one day he'll be king, just like Grandpa Charles. The name hung in the air, Grandpa Charles. For all the distance, for all the wounds, Harry had kept their father alive in his children's stories. William seized the opening. Would you like to meet him one day? The children looked at Harry, their eyes wide. Harry hesitated, then whispered, Would you like to meet your grandfather? He's been waiting to see you for a very long time. Archie nodded eagerly, but little Lilibet asked, Will he like me? Harry knelt, tears brimming. Sweetheart, he will love you more than words can say. You're named after his grandmother, the Queen, and has dreamed of holding you since before you were born. William felt the lump in his throat swell. This was it, the thread of healing, woven not just for brothers, but for generations. Later, as Megan tucked the children inside, Harry stood alone with William under the first stars. His voice trembled. I want to call him. I want call Dad. William handed him his phone. Harry dialed, his fingers shaking. Across the ocean, a cautious voice answered. William, is everything all right? But it wasn't William who replied. It was Harry. It's me, Dad. A silence so deep it felt eternal followed. Then King Charles's voice cracked through, thick with disbelief. My boy, is it really you? Tears streamed down Harry's cheeks. It's me. I read your letter. And I love you. I've always loved you. I was just too angry to say it. On the other end of the line, muffled sobs. I love you too, son, more than you'll ever know. I've missed you every single day. For William, watching his brother collapse onto the garden bench, overwhelmed by forgiveness, it was as though years of bitterness melted away in minutes. Can you forgive me? Harry whispered. There's nothing to forgive, Charles replied. You're my son. Always. They spoke for an hour, about the past, about Diana, about the grandchildren Charles longed to meet. Plans were made. A visit, a dinner, a chance. When the call ended, Harry sat in stunned silence. He wants us to come home. Not forever, just a visit, to let the children meet him, to start again. William smiled through his tears. Then this is not an ending. It's a beginning. At dawn, as William prepared to leave, Harry embraced him tightly. Thank you, he whispered, for not giving up, for reminding me what family means. And thank you, William replied, for choosing to try again. As William's car pulled away, he looked back at his brother, standing in the doorway with Megan. A family, fragile yet whole, beginning again. And across a nation, though no cameras captured it, though no speeches were made, something stirred. A silent farewell to years of division. A quiet embrace of hope, a reminder that even the most public families are still, at their core, just that, families. And so, a story that began with a simple knock on a study door became something larger than the royals themselves. It became a story of fathers and sons, of brothers separated and reunited, of forgiveness that dared to rise above pride. In that quiet garden in California, the world didn't see headlines or protocol. It saw two brothers, William and Harry, finding their way back to each other. It saw a father, once burdened by silence, daring to write with love. And it saw the truth we all know deep down. Family is worth fighting for, even when the fight feels impossible. Sometimes the most powerful farewells aren't shouted from balconies or written in history books. They are silent, whispered between brothers, echoed in a father's tears, carried in the laughter of children who remind us what truly matters. If this story touched you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who believes in second chances. Subscribe for more stories of grace, resilience, and the quiet power of love. And remember, sometimes the greatest crown we can wear is forgiveness.